Are you breaking a sweat? People are too comfortable these days. They want it to come easy because it did come easy for a certain amount of time. And everybody wants to be an originator. And to be frank with you, there are a lot of people that are originators that barely know anything as far as education goes behind origination.
You're going to see people that are using the 07, 08 market because people that own homes have very limited experience with the market.
I like to sell with value. I like to have meaning behind the sales, and I like emotional sales. And I think right now people need you, and you have to figure out why they need you. But if you're just looking at numbers, you're not going to get that deep.
This market is an opposing market. The reason we think it's the same as originators is because the rates were going up back then, and that affected our selling ability.
Welcome everybody to the show today. Very exciting agenda for you guys today. Like I've said many times before, I had to turn off the light in my office. If you guys remember last week, the lighting just had me looking like I was coming straight from heaven, which I try to be for my clients all the time. Try to be an angel sent from above to help the client on the phone with not only their finances, but also their life. And that's something that keeps me going. But anyways, we got Christine Beckwith with us today. And if you want to talk about a mortgage or a sales or a consulting giant in the industry, this is who we're bringing on. And I always tell you guys, I don't shy away from competition. I network with competition. I get to know competition. I bring competition on the show because I believe every single person brings different value. And it's been a while since we had a female guest on the show as well. And she is a perfect guest to bring on today. So Christine Beckwith, CEO and founder of the largest mortgage consulting firm in America. She's been in the game for 38 years. You heard that right. She's the best-selling, award-winning, multi-published author, and she's coming out with a new book right now called Hi, Selling is a Drug, which I absolutely love that title. Welcome, Christine, to the show. Excited to have you.
So happy to be here. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction.
Why don't you start off by introducing yourself, telling us how you got into this industry, where you come from, and how you're here today.
I started in the industry in 1988 as an understudy to a female originator. I spent 3 years there. I became an originator coming out of college. I went to school for sports medicine and nutrition, got the bug to be in the industry, stayed in origination, and then kind of rose up the ranks. 38 years is a lot to go over, so I'm not going to bore everyone with my resume, but I'll, condense it by saying by the time I was 26, I was an originating branch manager in Central Massachusetts. H&R Block Mortgage would come in and buy my regional company, and I would spend the next 12 years with them. And over that 12 years, I rose to district, regional, and then senior vice presidency over the whole national platform, which was about 1,250 originators and 210 branch managers, right up to the mortgage implosion, and closed it down ahead of that because we obviously were publicly traded on Wall Street and we had to protect shareholder price. And did that. We closed the mortgage division in the black. I took 50 LOs from the local market, opened a boutique mortgage company in Boston, and within 60 days, I got another call from a Wall Street mortgage-backed securities bondsman by the name of Joe Penabianco, who was a young, new millionaire from his investments, and he wanted to build a mortgage company, but didn't know how to build a national platform. And he found out through his president that I had just moved. They came and tried to get me to go with them. They had a small branch in New Jersey. I was under contract for 2 years, so they wanted to get me so badly, they bought the company to acquire my contract. And they brought me in, and for the next 12 years, I was the national director of real estate development and sales for Annie Mac Home Mortgage, which today is one of the top 20 financial correspondent lenders in the country. And that would take me to 2018. We built about 92 branches there. And when I left, the company was doing about $5.5 billion, which I think they would double over the next 5 years. And for the last 5 years, I've been running 2020 Vision Consulting.
That's an impressive background. background, and it's a lot of experience in the mortgage world.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what made you make the switch from mortgage world to 2020 vision. Or is it the same, or is it aligned? Why don't you explain 2020 vision and what you're doing now?
Yeah. So 2020 Vision is a school specifically for mortgage and real estate professionals. I had always hired coaches and I was always an athlete. I love sports, bit of a tomboy, I guess. And I just love that. Like selling is a sport. Like I just got done writing this book that's coming out and I loved revisiting like the best in sales, talking about the pedigree that I saw and ran with. Over time, I would hone like obviously my recruiting and hiring skills. And I learned that I was a teacher. Speaking was a vital part of my executive leadership. I was often having to get in front of large groups and then national groups. And then I ended up on the real estate speaking circuit for the final 10 years of my executive leadership. And the whole time I was aging and I was getting older and I was getting sick of corporate America, to be quite frank with you. And I just had this epiphany one day sitting in the boardroom of my 12-year job. And I thought, I really want to go out and build something that is deeper and more vast for our industry. We had coaches, they're my competitors today. There's many greats. I actually have coached underneath many of the greats for years, not just a month or two, like years under some of the greats. And I have a ton of respect for them, but I didn't feel that their coaching had depth. I didn't feel that it had complexity. If you come as an originator and I get 10 other originators, all of you have a different background. You might all have different sales models. You might have different tenure. And I didn't want to just plug you in and say, get in this box. Here's my sales coaching. And this is it. So we run every single week on multiple tracks with 60 coaches, live classrooms, virtual training, as you know, that's supported by Lightspeed VT, Brad Lee's system. And it's complex. I mean, it is a massive undertaking. And we coach executives, operations, we do compliance, we do financial forensics, we do health and wellness, grief counseling. Like it's massive. And so when people come here, they're getting the whole body experience. They're learning how to be healthy themselves, to learn real business acumen. This is a real school that doesn't exist for originators to learn how to build business fundamentals, if you will. And so I just had this idea that I would do it, and I took the leap of faith. I had amassed some wealth, and I felt like I could capitally invest the company myself, which is what I did. And I just went out day one without a single customer and started cold calling all of my connections. And one by one, I began to get consulting contracts, and now we're going into year 6.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of confidence, and it takes a lot of guts to leave such a safe corporate job and go all in.
100%. That it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of money on the table too. And people thought I was crazy, and a lot of people told me not to do it. And I just had a passion and a direction. When you're breaking up in a relationship and it's kind of like you haven't said it's over, but it's over. That's how I felt in my job. Like every day that I was going, it was like, okay, like what I had lived so adrenaline filled. I had built companies, taken last place teams and helped them go to first place. And I just was always, driving towards something that had a start, middle, and end. And now I was kind of coasting at this point in my career, and I wanted a bigger fight. And this gave me that challenge, and I felt like I still had it in me to build something, and I'm still building things. I just added 2 new companies this year while the market's been a little bit lighter. And so, I'm going to be 55 in November, and I'm still reaching, like I still have that fire, So I'm a big proponent of like finding what makes you excited. Selling makes me excited. Running businesses make me excited.
Well, yeah, my passion is sales. I do teach leadership and culture as well, but started in sales, and that's where the majority of my clientele comes from. We got salespeople on the call. We got salespeople that are going to be listening to this. What is your advice for the salespeople that don't have that burning desire or passion to sell anymore? Why don't we start there? What do you have to say to people that are struggling finding that desire? Like you took a leap of faith, you cold called, you left a lot of figures on the table, and you went all in on your passion, and people thought you were crazy. Salespeople right now that are not finding that fire, I get questions sometimes, when you lose that ignition of the fire, what do you do? What do you got to say to those kind of people?
Yeah, I actually write about this in my book because I do think that people can get into funks, and I kind of diagnose what I understood would happen because I saw top salespeople fall. I talk about something called the upper limits. I have a whole chapter dedicated to it, and it actually talks about the fall of the greatness, that the fall of the giants. There's a whole book that was written by Gay Hendricks that I read called the Genius Zone. And it truly, I witnessed it my whole career, which is just that. And we know because we follow athletes and pro, professional race car drivers and all of the like. And we know it's hard to consistently win. Excellence is hard to repeat. It's hard to fuel, and I've lived through the era of, obviously everybody kind of leaning into like figuring out what their why is. And so I think in order to get out of a funk, you have to first diagnose how you got in the funk. It could be, and I list a lot of things and I'm not going to have them to memory, but off the top of my head, the number one thing that gets us is exhaustion. What usually brings us there is repeatedly doing things that don't bring us results. So we have frustration. And so that's kind of where we get into the whole mindset scope of like, how do you stay in what we call a broaden and build mindset and out of the fight or flight? You have to get some wins. And so you have to have tangible goals. That doesn't make your goals less. You have to examine also if the things you're doing are working. I use a lot of analogies when I talk, and I always say, like, for 2021 in Q3, where the rates begin to rise, loan officers stood there like deer in the headlights for at least 90 days, and all economic reports were the rates were going to stay up. And so it was far easier for me as a coach to kind of help people start to pivot to a new fishing hole. But people stayed in that damn place that they had been selling for a year, trying to do the same thing, banging on the same drums, going to the same people and getting nowhere. And the people that would listen and say, look, we got to pick up our boats, we got to bait our lines different, we got to go to a different fishing hole. We're not fishing for buckets anymore. We're trying to find the fish for dinner that we have tonight. That has to be enough. And so if you had a day, I would talk, this would be a workshop, because I would bring everybody in that was in that funk and we would diagnose why, and it would be 5 or 6 reasons. And then we would start to pull those reasons apart at the bone in how, you cure them. And by the way, they're all curable. Nobody ever stays in a funk forever. And if it's market indicative, and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm hardcore when it comes to stuff like this, because I feel like a lot of things that have been brought to me over my lifetime by salespeople that were installed situations are excuses. And I talk a lot about the Harvard University study of 1974, where the MBA graduating class sets their goals 20 years out, and 13% of them ended up being the wealth of 82% of the class 20 years out. And there's a whole philosophy between setting goals and also your recovery time to disruption, things that come to disrupt you: death, illness, job loss, divorce. There's things that take us to our knees. And I understand, those are real things. They're not excuses. However, our ability to operate professionally at our highest level comes from our ability to react and, not sit in the mire of these things. And the same is true about selling. When you get hit with a certain type of market condition, whole companies will fall because they don't have leaders that know how to pivot that sales force. So that's some of what, the answer is complex, but it's deep as well. And it starts with kind of looking in the mirror and saying, what is my malfunction right now?
Yeah, somebody told me to talk to you about that. They told me if you're going to be talking about the market with Christine, make sure you tell her to talk about her paradigm shift. And one thing that I say about the market is it's the hottest market ever, because people need cash the most and need your help the most. And I'd rather sell when people are in need than 2020 when the market's on fire and you're just fishing in a barrel for low rates. I like to sell with value. I like to have meaning behind the sales, and I like emotional sales. And I think right now people need you, and you have to figure out why they need you. But if you're just looking at numbers, you're not going to get that deep. So what is this paradigm shift that you talk about?
As far as paradigm shifts go, in market influx, I dedicated a whole chapter again in the book that's coming up that's called Off Wall Street from the Front Line. And it dives deeply into the economic shifts that affect the mortgage industry. People that lived through 07, 08, we all know. I did. I was leading a national organization to closure, actually. And so that's the ultimate end, right? That's the ultimate, you would think that's like a bad ending to a great story. And the truth is we closed in the black, we saved the parent company money, et cetera, et cetera. 1998 is one of the first paradigm shifts that I saw, with the first defaults coming in from the early subprime notes when they were new. And so in my whole career, 38 years, there's only been 8 lowering rate markets. And this paradigm shift is brought on obviously by a different set of circumstance from the 07, 08. And this is a big mistake we make. So if you guys are talking to consumers and you're getting common buying objections or even home sales objections, which you're going to get as well, you're going to see people that are using the 07, 08 market, because people that own homes have very limited experience with the market. They know what rates are when they're buying or refinancing. They think they're an expert after doing one of those or 2 of those those transactions. And certainly it's painful and it's memorable and it's commemorable that they went through it. However, the market in '07 and '08 was a rising default market. We had really loose guidelines for the prior decade. The NINAs, the no income, no asset loans. We were doing, 5-family commercial, residentially. We were doing 95% cash out. And we were doing all of these things that had loosened all these guidelines up. And there was a very low demand. And when the demand for buying fell, coupled with the defaults rising, it was the perfect storm that nobody saw coming that would ultimately result in unprecedented foreclosure and defaults. And so living through that was interesting because we knew people back then that were in foreclosures in their homes, not paying their mortgages for a year or two before somebody came from the bank to actually seize the home. This market is an opposing market. The reason we think it's the same as originators is because the rates were going up back then, and that affected our selling ability. And that's our direct impact. And that impact is the same right now. Our direct ability to sell well is hard, and we're in a rising rate environment or a higher rate environment. So let me give you a couple of things that you can take away today that are really powerful. Number one, we're in a high demand market. So we all know there's an inventory issue. There's more people that want to buy. And based on all of our statistics and what we know about the demographics behind us in the many generational groups that are coming, that is not going to change. That means building markets are going to continue. That means value will stay up. And I'm not going to be appreciated by all the major news networks because I come out of the gates in my book saying, don't watch your evening news if you want to be an economic expert, because they give bad advice to the consumer. They give wrong advice to the consumer, and it's costing consumers hundreds of thousands of dollars and investors probably millions of dollars. I know one anchor on one station that will remain nameless that has consistently for 5 years come out in January with headlines to not buy. It's not a buyer's market. For the person that didn't buy the last 5 years, it probably cost them on a $500,000 house somewhere around $200,000 in ascended equity. And so we have to understand that values of homes are going to remain there. They have consistently gone up. They're going to go up. They're not going up 15, 20% like they used to. They're going up 3 to 8%, but it's still great. And so we'll build into the demand, and that will continue. The rate is overinflated. The government should have stepped in by now because the mortgage industry is in a recession, but they're folding us underneath the global economy and saying we're not in a recession. So we need housing reform. And you see lobbying going on right now for that effect. This is a great time. Last nugget. Every person in America for the last 40 years has a note that they hold on an average, 80% of Americans, for 32 to 36 months. During that time, they're going to seek out a new refi or sell their home. That is an average statistic. That is a true statistic. We are in the 35th, 36th month of the highest refi boom that we've been in. What does that mean? It means the pain of cash at hand for the consumer is really big right now. Nobody has cash at home. All their reserves have been spent. The debt is higher historically than it's ever been. And so home debt, credit card debt, loans, all those things are through the roof. So it's great to say you got a 2% mortgage rate. It's great that you love that payment you got with that 2% mortgage rate or that 3% mortgage rate. But if everything around you is inflated and your security position is lowered, you're not, and you have equity, by the way. You have the answer we didn't have in '07 and '08 because everybody was upside down because of the drop in values in homes. We have the answer. So let go of the low rate that you're white knuckling, consolidate all this debt, get some cash reserves, reinvest, and bring yourself into the market because that cash flow, it's the traffic jam, that's also impeding us from recovery. I see 6 to 12 months ahead of us of slow progress recovery, both brought on by the presidency that will be coming in. I don't want to say anything political, so I'm going to leave that alone, but it's going to get addressed. It has to be addressed. And, we're going to continue to see properties that ascend and keep their value. The builder's market continue. So you got to call those people that are in that pain and talk them off the ledge of holding their low interest rates.
I love it. And everything you're saying to me, I can't help but to think like these are the things we should be telling our clients. We should be saying it with the same enthusiasm, the same tone. I call it, creating the need. How many times throughout your conversation are you dropping seeds seeds of things you're talking about. So by the end of the call, the client's like, yeah, this makes sense. I shouldn't wait on this and I should do this because Christine already explained to me A, B, C, and D throughout the conversation. I feel like a lot of times we're so focused on what's the problem, what's the solution, I'll bring it to you, that we're missing all the building of the sale around it. And I think that's where your true profession comes into place, especially with realtors. I talk about this all the time. A lot of realtors out there just want to get you the white box. Like, what do you need? I'll get you it. Like, I literally had to, I hope my realtor's not on here. I had to call people, make appointments, tell my realtor, I made an appointment with this one before you. Like, well, it's out of your range. It's not, who cares? Like, you should give me 50 of these. Like, I need to move, right? Yeah. I'm looking for an office space, conference space. I need to move on this. And I feel like it's just like, it's a lot of lazy work being done in the industry and not a lot of professional work. So when people listen to you, I want them to know that this is what they need to sound like to their clients. This is how they build trust. Now, I have to ask you this because I've been hearing this left and right. The clients right now that are saying, well, I'm going to wait till after September. I'm going to wait till the end of the year. I'm going to wait till next year because they're saying the opposite. The rates are going to go down. What do you do in those scenarios?
I think you have to ask why. Why are you waiting? Because I think that you have to look at their total debt portfolio. You have to look at how they've handled their cash in the last 3 to 4 years. You have to ask probing questions in both of those directions. Has their credit card gone up and they're making minimum payments? Do they understand that an average credit card is amortized over 25 to 30 years? I know a lot of them are making some sort of principal payment over the minimum, but with compounding interest on those, they're just bleeding. And so, like, to think that waiting, it's an apples to apples comparison, and it's very tunnel vision. When people stop looking at their whole financial picture of their ability to gain wealth, I always talk about our grandparents who said, pay your mortgages off, pay extra. I mean, I spent 20 years in my first part of my career pulling amortization sheets so that people could figure out how much extra to send in every month so they could, make a 30-year get paid off in 20 or a 20 get paid off in 10. And if we really think about why we get that advice from our elders, they wanted to leave their homes debt free. They didn't have the Homestead Act. They didn't have life insurance and mortgage insurance that was going to protect their loved ones. We can get a term life insurance policy for $100 a month for $500,000. The average American that owns a home that is valued less than that, they should be mining the equity out of the home, the whole life, 70 years old, 80 years old, using that to live, and then having that life term policy with a trust that dictates it's to pay off the mortgage when they die. They leave their kids debt free, if that's the number one objection. The other thing is, why give up all of the best of your life, your healthiest parts of your lives, working your tail off for extra, extra, extra? Because the finish line of that a lot of times are people finishing their 30-year mortgages in their 50s, 60s, sometimes 70s, and they think they've reached the mountaintop of their financial quest. And the truth is, now they're ailing. They have no tax deduction because they have no mortgage vehicle, and they have no great earning at that point either. So the house paid off isn't giving them more income. And so it's really inept from a consumer standpoint. And I'm going to tell you that, our financial literacy in America is way, way below where it should be. And I blame us in part for this, because for 25 years, anybody could be a mortgage originator. Okay. There was no regulation. There was no licensure, as you know. And today, we are more educated, certainly with the national mortgage licensing system. However, to say that we do home buying education. And what do? We prepare them to make the application. Here's what you're going to need to apply. Here's all the documents you're going to need. You're going to need this kind of credit. You're going to need to have this, this, and this. But we're not talking to them about what financial investment, mortgage investment, real estate investment, and wealth looks like. And so when we really get outside of ourselves, the greatest mortgage loan officers are the guys that learn the economy, that every single day go and seek out economic sources of information within our industry. Forget about the news. I'm going to say it 10 times. Don't get your economic news from, you're going to do it wrong, you're going to say it wrong. And someone will be smart enough to call you out at some point. My market was the greater Boston market. And I came in as a 21-year-old originator with like millionaire investors. And I have to tell you, I screwed up a lot of loans my first year because I didn't know how to explain all the complexities of the arms and all the things that were there. And I had like the consumer like giving me information and taking pity on me. And they liked me enough to finish the loan. But you have to know your shit. You have to know this. This is not, it's not good enough anymore. And LOs that are listening, if you're listening, or companies that hire and manage loan officers, if your guys are struggling right now, you got to get underneath that hood of what they know about today's economy, what the common consumer objections are, how they're going to overcome those to a winning level. So I know that's a really long answer for the short question of why wait. The simple end to that is they can refi again after 6 months. They can catch the next wave of low rates. They're not stuck in the place that they'll be right now. But if it gives them financial help, they should do it immediately.
Yeah, I remember companies like Rocket Mortgage used to send a market update every single day, which was somebody like you explaining the market in very simple terms and then telling you exactly how to use it on the phone. And every single morning they would send something out, which was nice for culture and training people and teaching them exactly what they need to do. So, okay, so for, LOs listening, salespeople listening in general, because I know we got some realtors and other kind of salespeople as well on the academy. What do you recommend as far like Sunday, they want to plan a good, effective week. What does a salesperson have to do to plan a good, effective week? What are some of the things they should be thinking about throughout their week and things they should execute on?
Yeah. First and foremost, they should have a target of 4 4-hour buckets for prospecting, 4 4-hour buckets that are half of each day of 4 of their days. And so that's a 16-hour target. And I've been challenged my whole career for the last 20 years of my executive career by people are thinking that's not enough. I sell all the time, but when we get in there, no, they don't. They manage their pipeline, they do their email, they talk to their buddies in the cubicle next to them, and so on and so forth. They get distracted by, fires and things like that. The truth is, concentrated marketing and sales is something that requires like top of mind selling. Everyone knows, like, I'm going to say this. What do you feel like on the first cold call? Pretty shitty, right? What do you feel like on the 10th cold call? Well, now you're starting to get your head kicked in. Now you're getting mad. And now you're like, I'm ready to go. If you're a sales guy, right? And you started to overcome those objections. I've stood up in my cubicle when I've been making phone calls because I'm on like the 20th call and I can feel my own like adrenaline, like, let's go. I'm going to make 50 phone calls today and the 30th is going to be better than the 20th and so on. We are so out of shape in this industry right now because nobody's making that quantity because the volume has slowed. And so when we were being fed leads, it was easy because we had that repetition and that repetition created momentum. It created, a vigorous type of salesperson. And so you have to get yourself into fighting shape as a salesperson. Like if you just have had an easy week this week, took a nap in the middle of the afternoon, sauntered in at 10 o'clock this morning, and you're like, I don't really have a lot going on. And all while like pissed that you're not doing loans, I'm going to tell you, you're doing it wrong and you need to restructure your week. Your day should start with getting into your seat, clearing email. Email should be something you visit 3 times a day and sweep. You should be, I know you guys have realtors and people that you need to answer to. You can up that to 5 times, but it's not a place to live. And managing your pipeline is the same thing. If you put trust in the people around you and you want to really be a gangster salesperson, you're not going to get caught in the mire of that. You're talking to someone with OCD. So I had a really hard time letting go of my loan. So I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite when I say this. I paid really close attention to my pipeline when I had it, but I always turn myself back to prospecting. And I do today. If I don't put 4 hours into prospecting, and again, if you don't know what you should be doing in prospecting when I say this, then get with your team and a bunch of your peers and sit down in a think tank for like 3 to 4 hours and talk about nothing but the ways that you can find leads. Because I'm going to tell you, I've had sales guys that I could have thrown the phone book at that would have taken that phone book and made money out of it, just randomly calling. And then I had guys that you could do a pretty lead that had vetting and had 12 deal killer questions by a telemarketer, scrubbing the thing down so that it was a viable, likely to qualify lead, hand it over and couldn't convert for a number of reasons. They couldn't build fast rapport. They couldn't qualify right. They didn't know when to pull the trigger. They oversold. Like there's like a million different things, right? And so it's a matter in my mind of, do you feel like you're breaking a sweat as a sales guy? And that's hard to do when it's slower, but you need to do that. Like you got to get out there right now and run for it. Also tie yourself down with activity tracking. You should do activity tracking during Mondays. You should submit it to somebody that's your accountability partner saying what it is you're going to do, how much of it you're going to do. And on Friday, somebody better show up by noon and say, what did you do? And then talk to you about what you did or didn't do. And sometimes you'll miss the mark and you got to talk about that. Sometimes you'll hit it and still not get the ROI, but it's a game swings. It's an at-bat game and you can't step up to the plate without without getting into the batter's box, you're not going to swing well. And so when we're rusty and we're not focused on the things that we should be focused on, that is where we fall. So speaking to sales guys, which you said was your greatest audience, asking me what they need to do during the week, they need to get their sales to the top of their mind. There's something called reticular activation. It's a scientific term, and it's about how our brain sees things. And it's, when your wife is pregnant or you ladies are pregnant and all of a sudden you think it's an epidemic and everybody's pregnant. And that's not true. You're going to places, you're going to baby stores, you're buying baby clothes, you're planning a baby shower, you're building a nursery at home. It's what you see, but you do begin to see everything. Ever hear a word that you've never heard before? And then suddenly you see it again like 3 days later and it like makes the hair on your arm stand up because you haven't seen that word in 46 years and now you're seeing it twice in 2 weeks. No, you've probably seen it 100 times in your life. But when your reticular activator brings your eyesight to something, that is where your focus goes. And so I'm going to tell you, I'm a seasoned reticular activator salesperson. I practice top of mind selling so it stays here. It's always here. I'm always looking for every opportunity.
My favorite thing you said was, are you breaking a sweat? Are you breaking a sweat? People are too comfortable these days. They want it to come easy because it did come easy for a certain amount of time. And everybody wants to be an originator. And to be frank with you, there are a lot of people that are originators that barely know anything as far as education goes behind origination. They studied the safe, they passed the safe, they got their license, and they started selling and they stopped growing. I always tell people, like, I don't know about you, but I studied real hard for the safe test. I'm not a very good test taker. I failed it the first time at 74 point something, passed it the second time. But the second time when I took it, Rocket told me, hey, if you don't pass it, you're not gonna have an opportunity here. And I sold my company to go to Rocket. So those 30 days, I'll never forget it because like connected to so much more. I tell people like everything in life's a test. Like that's my motto now. But I ignored everything. I put my head down. I studied for 30 days because I had no other choice. And then I finally got the chair. And when I got the chair, all I got was the chair and the headset and the computer and the leads. And then I started telling salespeople as I became a leader and a senior leader, like, you thought your big test was a safe test to get the chair. The real test is what's in front of you now when you're on that chair. And why do we stop studying and putting our heads down and reading and putting index cards and objections and prospecting and planning? Why do we stop doing all of that after we pass the test? The real test is here. So I love that. Are you breaking a sweat?
It's true. And you need to be a perpetual learner. I have people that will end up in my sales desk sometimes and tell me, convince me why I should coach. And I'm like, no, that's not my job. I run a coaching company. That's like coming to the gym and saying, convince me to come to this gym. That's a recipe for failure in my mind. I'll sit with someone and philosophically talk about what coaching is. I wrote a book for Jay Duran because we have him as a mutual friend called Finding Honor, The Journey to the Truth. But it's a whole book about me submitting myself to professional development and how I stumbled upon Jay lecturing in Philadelphia, and the book just takes off. And I give all of my nitty gritty, my highs, my lows during my career, things that knocked me down, and just, my ability to keep having a thirst for education. If you don't think you can get better, and by the way, what my favorite client is? The pro athlete, the guy that's really good. What I want here is to turn out success. I believe there's a bigger limit that someone can reach that they don't even know if they want that, or maybe they want the opposing. Maybe they want a better work-life balance and they cannot figure out how to stick themselves from where they are. We figure those things out as well. Because it's complex and you kind of need a third party to do it. You can have self-accountability, but I need somebody to kick me in the ass to drive me even harder. I like that accountability. So you're talking about a philosophy of growth. And I hope when I'm 90, I'm reading books. My dad comes here. I have a library on the top floor of my 2020 Vision retreat home, and he takes out books, and he wants to still learn, and he's in his 70s. And I love that about him. Then he comes back and he talks to me about the books. And so I know, I kind of have had that example in my life. But don't you want an exciting life? Like, why did we enter sales too? Like in my book, I say not everybody is supposed to be here. Brad says it in the opening of the book because Brad wrote the foreword, and he said, this is not a book for everybody. Like this is a book for the people that are good, that want to get great, and the people that are great that want to get excellent. And so that's it. Like, where do you get your, kind of get your fire?
Yeah. So what's this book about? It's called High, Selling is a Drug. And when is it coming out, by the way?
November 20th. It's in final editing production right now. It's so exciting. It was not an easy book for me to write.
I mean, the title's sick.
Thank you. It's daring for a buttoned up previously female, banking executive that now is out and as a consultant. But that's kind of who I am. And that's true. Like, would you pick up a sales book if it didn't sound like it had grit? Would you pick up a sales book if you didn't think the person writing it knew what the hell they were talking about? So how do you write a title that speaks to every single salesperson in the world? And, again, with the pressures of trying to do another bestseller, which is my team's pressure, now that we've had four. And it's just, again, selling is a drug. And we talk about addiction and we talk about ADD and OCD in the book. It's a book for the true blue sales guys. Like, it is a book. It is the playbook for people that want, if you have a national sales organization right now, and you should know one number as a national sales manager, and that's funded loan per loan officer, FLPLO. Okay. It's a financial forensic term. And that means what is the average loan officer in this national firm funding per month? And there is an average waterline number.
What is that?
And so it basically takes, if you have 10 guys that are selling and everybody is selling different amounts of loans and closing different amounts, it's going to accumulate monthly the total of your loans, divide by the head count, and give you an FLPLO number. So that team of 10 loan officers, if they were each doing between 2 and 5, might end up, like 3.25 average FLPLO. That is a driving number for an executive, because if we want to raise that to 5, we now have to come up with 1.5 more loans per head. Nobody does a half loan, but you get what I'm saying. And so in my day, those were the goals set for me as a leader, like to reverse engineer towards those numbers. And those walks were incredibly exciting, by the way, to just try to get, to the next level. And so High is going to be a book that is going to set the mortgage industry on fire, I hope. I'm really happy to be also telling my own 40-year story, more or less, through pictures in the book. Every great person in my story that promoted me all the way back to when I was 26 and got my first area manager job will be featured in the book. Either they took a photo with me that's current. I've been flying all around the US, reacquainting myself with all of these leaders with captions, or they will be pictured in the book, and it tells a story in pictures in between all the tactical matter. But it is going to change the trajectory of a salesperson that puts that. It is the playbook. It is the playbook. I feel it's going to be really strong if they apply all the tactics.
Well, I think the salespeople that understand the title, like when you say selling is a drug, I'm like, it is a drug, right? Because that's how it feels. I feel like not every salesperson feels that way. I feel like the sharks that make a lot of money in sales, that are great at this, that are naturals, even build their way to naturals, feel this way. How do you get the people that don't feel the same amount of energy and feel like it is, because like it's a drug because you could make unlimited money. That's why it's a drug, right? And
yeah, I mean, I unpacked the connotation of addiction in one of the chapters where I talk about things that are positive, that we can be overworkers, but we can get great success from it. We can, there's things that are positive, even though it's a negative connotation. But to answer your question, if you have 10 guys, you want 3 or 4 of them to be your gangsters of sales. You want those guys. Those are the money hungry guys. Those are the guys fighting for first place. You should be having sales contests. I say in the book, I give a whole reporting structure of what you should do for the top performance. Like, it needs to be made public. I say, if people don't like their numbers being public, terminate them immediately. Because guess what, guys? Sales is not a private thing. It's a public thing. And I talk about how much I hated being put on the rosters when I first joined teams, because I would be at the bottom and I wasn't a smack talker. I wasn't cocky. I was very quiet and I kept my head down. And I was also outnumbered, and I never let that bother me from a female male standard. But I just always had that competitive thing in my head, like, just watch me, like in my head, I'm going to rise up, through the ranks, and I would, you fight my way forward. You need 4 of those guys. You need 3 guys that are steady eddies, that are like in the middle. They're going to give you your consistent average number of FLPLO, funded units per loan. And you're going to want those guys. You need those guys too. You need that middle of the road. And by the way, if you get really good at sales leadership, you're probably going to be able to get 2 to 3 more units a month out of that middle guy. They'll become like your, upper pack. You'll get your, who can do the most growing is your top guys. So even though they're putting up 8, 9, 10 units a month, they're the guys that can give you 15 or 16. They have the potential. They have the characteristical makeup to like double their numbers. And so here's the problem with management. We spend all of our time on the bottom 4 guys. That suck. That's been there for 12 to 18 months and they're not cutting their teeth and they're missing the triggers. They're missing where to, pull that trigger. And I'm not talking about new guys, by the way. I'll give everything I have to a new guy for 24 months. But when they get past that point, they're now considered a veteran or they're considered at least tenured. So we spend all our time on that bottom group. And the problem with the bottom group is you can't move the needle there. And so it is a mirage for leadership. And so I say in the book, and I've always said this to my sales leaders that I trained after I learned it, don't focus your energies there. Focus your energies on the middle and top performers. Give what you need to the bottom guys, and then let them fight their way off the bottom. Let them be seen on the public, reports. Give your recognition to the top. Stir the pot of competition. So you should always be firing your bottom 15% after 24 months, probably every quarter. And I know I don't ever want to manage by fear, but there should be an element within the sales, and sales is not the most PC place. And I know what I'm saying right now is going to sound super controversial. Do I think I'm a professional person? I do. Do I think I can be politically correct? I do. However, sales is the locker room of professional support as sports. And you absolutely, that is where the towel slapping is going to go on. That is where the cat calling is going to happen. That is where you're going to call your teammate out. That is where things don't look as pretty as they do when you get on the court. And if as a manager, you can't stand in that locker room and fire your bottom 15%, because the message you're going to send when you do that is what you did today mattered. If you performed well, you matter. You get to keep your seat. Okay. And so I was always cutting my every quarter and it was easy, right? It wasn't opinionated. I wasn't picking people off personalities. I was purely numbers based. There was a minimum standard I would put forward. That was the number that needed to be met. It was market indicative. It moved with the market. And then we drove to that number. So what do you do with the bottom guy? Is he under 24 months, over 24 months in the industry? That's your first question. If he's over 24 months, do a deep dive analysis of all the loans he just turned down. Start having him or her give you every single loan that they don't do or they don't qualify. Have them explain why the person didn't buy. Have them explain why they had to decline it, suspend it. Start looking whether they're really able to qualify properly, and then record their calls and then listen to at least 10 of their calls a week fully, which is painful, by the way, to do. But once you do this diagnosis, you're going to figure out why. They may not be showing real interest on the phone. They might not be believable. They may not be educated about economics. They may not be overcoming the objections. They may not be pulling the trigger at the right time. They might be over talking the other person. They might not be listening to what the person is asking for. And so they might not know how to convert the price question from rate to cost and risk assessment, right? So diagnose, dive in, look at those people and then start reporting publicly your rankings. Let everybody have team meetings, have them twice a month at least, and have everybody that's doing great share what they're doing. Because even though we don't want to look at those same guys getting the trophies every month because they get nauseating and they're cocky and they're driving the nice cars and we're like, we're sick of them. Well, we need to learn from those guys because those guys have a right to be cocky and they have a right to be proud of the numbers. And I was never turned off by the guys that were beating their chests. I just secretly was always like, thinking in my mind that I was going to go for the gusto to take them out of their seats.
Yeah, I feel like that's a character you have to have in sales. It's a sport and you got to play the sport. If you don't like the sport, you shouldn't be in it. What took you from, you said when you first started, you were at the bottom, you didn't like stack ranks. Now it seems like you're the one smacking the towels in the locker room, right? You've made it to the top. What was the shift? Was there one thing that aha moment, or was it gradually, or was it with education and experience?
Yeah, obviously I gained experience as I went, and minute by minute I was able to, year by year assess where I was, pivot into whatever market that I was in, and kind of just get to that place where I could change. I do think I changed quickly when I needed to change, but sit right now, we're tired. It's been a long few years. We're sitting with a lot of tired people right now that are working really hard and getting very little, but are starting to get momentum. And when I say getting very little, as compared to past markets, their numbers are starting to rise. All the seeds they've been planting for 3 years are starting to come back. Those guys that kept marketing to their database even though the interest rates were low or whatever, those are certainly the guys that are going to have the phone calls come in when things get to where they need to be.
Awesome. Well, lastly, I want you to share. I heard an inspirational story about you with Gary Vee and a challenge that you did. And I think you got out of your comfort zone. And I think it's played a major role in your life. Could you explain that story?
Yeah. So in 2016, when I was thinking about coming into the consulting world, I really had no social media and I was almost 50 years old and I didn't know if I wanted to start social media, but I had been watching Gary Vee on LinkedIn and he had said his $2 a day marketing wouldn't cost anybody a lot of money and you had to do several things, and he outlines what those things are, including, adding people and gaining followers and then how many times is considered active posting and how to build like a TV station. And I just listened. And then I made a video and I put it on LinkedIn and I called him out and I said, okay, Gary, I have no social. I'm building a consulting company. I want it to be a national company. I'm going to go out on these 5 platforms. And that's what I did. And he said I'd get 10,000 followers. I got 100,000 followers. And then I did another video at the end of the year and went back out and said, okay, it works. I spent, and it was $24 that I had spent on the $2 a day marketing, no boosting, no paid for ads, no lead buys. And over the next 6 months, Gary's team reached out to me. I was in the Dominican Republic. It was December 4th, 2018. And I got a call that came in that said VaynerMedia. And I knew immediately it was Gary Vaynerchuk, VaynerMedia. And I answered it and they said, Mr. Vaynerchuk would like to speak to you at 3 p.m. today. And I was floored. And he asked me to speak at his Agent 2021 conference at the Miami Garden Stadium and to moderate. He knew I was actually an executive and a speaker, so they had done their research. So even though I was vetting his platform, I think he knew I could step on stage and talk about what I had done. And it was a great compliment to him. And I did. I got to interview the biggest marketers in the world, Four Seasons Hotel, John C. Tolbert, just giants, Good Morning America, Molly McKinley. And it was so powerful moment. I'll be talking about it when I'm 90 years old because it was just an unbelievable moment for my career. And by the way, it happened within the first 6 months of me launching this consulting company. And it did not hurt me to have that happening.
100%. And you had to post twice a day for how long?
Yeah. So he said post 3 to 5 times a week, add 10 people a day to every channel, have a variety in what you post, only make 20% of what you post your product and your call to action and make 80% who you are, because there's enough people in the world that are going to like who you are. You got to find your people because all of the world that owns home aren't your people. There's people out there that like the things that you like. Maybe you drive motorcycles. Maybe you like tattoos. Maybe you love dogs. Maybe you garden, whatever it is. Maybe you like football. Make sure the world in your social media knows what that is and share what you do. Maybe you're funny and you like to tell jokes. Maybe you're deep and want to put up quotes. Whatever it is, put it out there. Let all those people that want to follow you, and then ask who owns a home and who needs my product. Because we do it in reverse. We put all our product out and we wait to see who comes, and nobody has an emotional connection to us. So what he was teaching is monetary conversion. And I sold over $10 million in consulting over the next 5 years using free organic social media. And I want to tell you, as I sit here today, I have a 13-person marketing team, obviously has grown up, but 3 people a day organically post my posts. They're not done on robots. Some human is putting it out. I have people that are doing graphic, video, copyright. I was the one writing the words for the longest time. And then finally, I had people shadow me that could get my voice down through my writings and whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to be interactive. I spend an hour a night because it's my TV looking at my social media. I answer my messages on all my channels. I engage with my audience. He does still to this day. And so you can't mail it out and there's nothing that you're going to buy. And he indicates that when we pay for SEO for ego, like I want more likes, shares, and comments because my shit looks bad on social, that all we're doing is paying for engagement. So it is higher and it's getting activity, but that doesn't mean it's going to monetarily convert higher. And so what he says is what matters is your call to action working. So we've been monitoring this for 5 years and 80% of the people that buy from us do not leave a like, comment, or share on our social media, but find the call to action in the post, and the action they take is to call us, DM us, or whatever, and they do nothing with the post. And so by all SEO standards, my marketing looks flat and dull, but I'm converting at the Gary Vaynerchuk level because what I'm doing is say, the action you're going to take, call me today, email me today, DM me today. And we're measuring that. We're measuring who's picking up the phone from our social media and coming inbound and not not the engagement pieces, because it's less important to us than actually giving us your money to buy our product.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you could take that same exact philosophy of posting yourself and being yourself on social to the phone call with your clients or with your realtors or with your door-to-door sales. People need to get to know you and your personality, and that's what's going to create great relationships, not only for social media, but also in sales. On that note, Christine Beckwith, thanks so much for your time. You've been great. You're very inspiring. Can't wait for your book. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll have you back again. Thanks so much.